Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters. My name is Ann Pinkava, joined as always by the lovely Deplorable Knitter.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today.
And this week's episode is sponsored by Lynn of Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. You can find her stuff at chickenladyfiberarts.com and use our code PIKGreen20 for 20% off your order.
Yes, and if you do, you can get something fabulous like these two beautiful colors. The yellow one, yellowish one, is honey mustard. Not honey mustard, honey butter. Although it does have a little honey mustard to it. It's honey butter, and then the one inside of these little honeycombs is Friday Night Knitting Club. And those are two that you can get in our store right now. And I don't mean to steal her segment, but hey guys, this is my hat I've been working on. Do you like it? It's a bit farther than the last time I showed you, but as I was just telling Anne before we started, I haven't figured out the decreases yet. So it's kind of in limbo for a minute while I think about how I want it to decrease. But yeah, made with Chicken Lady Fiber Arts, super nice, feels good. I like to work with it. So there you go. I guess I'll just keep showing you guys what I'm working on. Is that
what else are you working on?
Okay, so I didn't work on this actually, but my mom did. I got a yarn from one of our gift exchanges, and it had a lot of colors in it, and I loved it. But unfortunately, every time I knit it up, I went, that doesn't look good. Oh, that doesn't look good. And so I showed it to my mom, and she had an idea. And so she knit up this hat. And even though it's like really got a lot of colors in it, I feel like the design works really well with all the different colors.
Was that from Adventures with Yarn?
Yeah, she gave it to me during the Christmas gift exchange 2 exchanges ago. And that's how long it's been sitting around. And I just didn't, you know, everybody gets those yarns, right? Where you get it, you love it. And then when you knit it, you go, that's not right. And so you rip it out and then you try it with something else. And you go, that's not right. So my mom had this idea and I love it. And there was enough in that one skein to make a pair of mitts also.
Oh, nice.
So here you go. So I'm working on, this is not my design, my mom did it, but I'm working on, I'm going to have to write it and grade it for different sizes. So if you have a funky yarn in your stash that you've been like, what do you want to be? I don't know. This might be the pattern for it. And so keep watch because I'm going to be doing that and I'm going to need testers and, you know, the whole thing. And then the last thing that is not knitting at all, I got more prizes. Mine are paperbacks. Sorry, Anne, but I prefer paperbacks, so that's what I bought.
That's all right.
But even this feels nice. Like, I love the way the cover feels. It's got that, like, soft touch where it's, like, I don't know. It's really nice. But, yeah. So I got more Odyssey Tale for all of our people.
Yay!
And I'm still reading Cody's book, Junction. I'm not done with it yet, but I canceled my Kindle Unlimited and it expires tomorrow. So I forgot I've got to finish the book tonight. Like, otherwise I'm going to not have an opportunity. I'll have to go buy it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. If you're into, it's kind of like a crime thing. I still am not sure what's going on because I haven't gotten that far into it. I'm enjoying it. I like the characters, but there's a lot happening and I'm not sure where it's going yet. But yeah, so there's Cody Schlegel's Junction and there's Odyssey Tale. So if you want a book that's not woke, go check it out. What have you been working on?
Let's see. I've been working on the Quinn's quilt again, and I'm almost to the halfway point here. I'll flip it around. Dun, 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 dun. But yeah, it is huge and yet not big enough. I've said this before, that's like, well, on one hand, you're knitting a blanket, and knitting a blanket takes forever. On the other hand, if you want a blanket, you want a blanket, like, of epic proportions. So yeah, I'm knitting it as written like a good girl before I go in and try to mess it up and make it bigger. But yeah, I'm working on here. So this is diagonally half the blanket. So I am working on these white sections and they're pretty cool. Except they're both garter stitched, but one of them is knit and purl, not knit and purl, you know what I mean. One of them is entirely knit and then the other side is entirely purl, which is kind of annoying, but I mean, it's working out.
What's the purpose of doing it like that?
Because okay, so when I started the quilts, I started with this diamond and then I knit down and then it goes out. So each section is triangular and then they're put together into a square. So this black square here, let me flip it around because I can show you on the other side where I'm picking it up. Okay, here we go. And also chalk up to the mess ups so I joined the two pieces together. And when I joined the two pieces together, I then read that, oh, by the way, it's easier to do these white sections before you join it on. I'm like, oh, well, that's all right. I already did it. And not only that, but here, where's my seam? Oh, okay, so it's Kitchener stitch, and you probably won't be able to see. No, I can't see that at all. Maybe a little bit, there we go, you can see it. Just barely though, that you're supposed to Kitchener stitch it, but I Kitchener stitched it so it's not garter right there. Like it is, just imagine a triple purl rib where it ought to have been garter. Oh, you can see it on the back side, maybe easier. There's the knit row. It's dark, it's hard to see. But anyways, but I left it and the rest of them I did the right way because that's kind of been my attitude towards this quilt. But now that I've done that, where's the bit? Here it is. Okay. So again, here's the square, and then you sort of bring it out from the sides when you do it. And it's this kind of slanted garter, pick up and knit along the edge sort of a thing. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that's cool. And then once you have the two squares, you're supposed to pick up and put another square in the corner. So yeah, so that's cool. Been working on that. Yeah, I love this quilt. It's a lot of fun.
That's good. I applaud you because it's fabulous looking, but I will still never make one. And so I'm very pleased for you.
Well, and that's the whole, I mean, it's like, yay, knitted blanket. I love a knitted blanket. But again, very simple knitted blankets is normally what I do, just a big mindless project. This one takes a bit of thought, but yeah, again, but then also when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, wait, I can use even fancier yarns. And that's not necessarily what you want in a knitted blanket anyways. Like I have a ton of gray sock wool, but I've been kind of taking that as like, ooh, maybe I should save this and do a sweater. And it's like, but if I save this and just throw it at another blanket, is that really wise? But whatever, I'm having a good time. And that's, does anything else matter?
I don't think it does. I think that as long as you're enjoying it, that's great. And me personally, for my personal joy, I need 2 crochet blankets because I just don't have the wherewithal to do that at this moment. You never know. I keep saying that when my kids are older, I might get into stuff, but who knows what's going to happen.
Right. Well, and I mentioned this before, but Amy of Two Sisters and Some Yarn, how we're in blanket competition because, to repeat again, she got the pattern for this blanket first, and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. So I got it too, and then she ended up pulling hers apart, and she just finished. It's this absolutely lovely crochet blanket, and she used all of the colors that she was going to use, and it's very pretty and everything. And been doing all sorts of crochet blankets. Like, those are awesome. I have half. I'll get there though.
Yeah, but crochet and knitting are 2 different animals when it comes to speed. And I mean, I know for most people, crochet is faster. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but but that's why I like to crochet blankets, because my attention span is that of a small child. Anne and I were talking about it before we started, about how I truly believe that I've got some sort of attention deficit thing going on because of the way I am able to flip from one thing to the other and completely forget about the first thing. Like, I'll go on to 3 different things, and by the time I get to the third, the first one has never happened ever in my whole life. And so I think that that's why I need stuff that, I hate instant gratification, but it's kind of instant gratification. You know what I mean? Like, can't take too long, otherwise I lose interest and go find something else to do. But hey, this is the difference between all of us. Did you have more knitting?
No. Actually, I really have just been working on this blanket. So
that's cool. But so speaking of instant gratification stuff, there is a little bit of a kerfuffle in the knitting world last week because the brand We Are Knitters put out a yarn, a crochet kit, I believe, with Zara. It's a fashion website. It's actually
is that like the Zara, who is part of the British royal family? Like, she's like a cousin.
No, this is it's a Spanish retailer.
Okay.
In Spain. But they specialize in fast fashion. And so anybody who, if you've heard about it, fast fashion is fashion that is easily replaceable. It's kind of like Old Navy, where every season you have many different choices. They come out very quickly with their stuff. Not necessarily made to last. It's not necessarily, you know, it's more of a, you want to be in style right this minute kind of thing. And so there's a lot of people in the knitting community, especially, who are against fast fashion, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. I think that there's a lot, people are very wasteful. And there's a lot of things where if we mended or repurposed, or we could get a lot more use out of things. So I get that.
Right. It's the back and forth between, like, okay, so I want clothes and I don't want them to be very expensive. And I mean, and in a lot of that, you get a lot of production from different third world countries, and you do get the Chinese slave labor goods. So there is problems with that. And a lot of people talk about waste and the amount of water it's used and pollution and this and that and the other thing. But also, like, getting, making for yourself what you don't buy is part of the whole knitting culture. It's the whole, like, this should last a while. This should be a quality garment. This should, that it is connected with the knitting world. And while it is something that is important, it's also something that becomes kind of a snooty factor after a while,
Right. It does become a snooty factor. And, like, I buy a lot of my stuff from Old Navy because it's in my budget. Right. But I also have, I tend to wear out my jeans very quickly. I'll get holes in the knees or whatever. I've started to do, like, that visible mending where you, like, put a patch on and then you, like, embroider flowers all around it. And so even though you've worn it out, now you've made it something cool and different again. And so, there's a balance between, like, just replacing your wardrobe that Zara site said that they had 20 lines in 1 year. So 20 lines, that is just a little over every 2 weeks they have new clothes coming out, which is kind of crazy.
It is, but people are buying.
Correct.
Oh, and with the mending, like, I got a book, this was a while ago, but on the Japanese sashiko, I think it's pronounced, which is also, imagine quilting, but you're basically reweaving the fabric. Like, you have a piece of fabric and you slap another piece of fabric and you're going all the way across in kind of a running stitch. You're going all the way across, and then another direction you're going all the way across, and you get absolutely beautiful patterns. I've always wanted to try it, but it's definitely a time-consuming thing.
Yeah. I have a pair of jeans. I have a pair of capris from Old Navy that I've not finished them yet, but I wore them until they were thin everywhere. And so like I am just like replacing whole leg panels and like sewing on top of it and stuff. And if I ever finish it, I'll show you guys because I think they're fun. And you know, maybe they're not something I can wear all the time like I had been wearing them, but at least I'll, you know, be able to use them again.
Right.
But so the problem with the We Are Knitters and the Zara thing is that so Zara puts out 20 collections a year, about every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, let's say. And We Are Knitters has on the very front page of their website about sustainability and slow fashion. And so people lost their minds because We Are Knitters is like, you know, do you care for things that you buy the same way you care for those you make? You know, knitting your own clothes makes you feel good and improves your self-esteem. And we tend to take better care of our handmade pieces so they last longer than the ones we buy. Make your own clothes, take care of them, and you'll be contributing to a more sustainable planet where the slow fashion industry has an important role. Okay, so slow fashion, fast fashion, doing a collection together. And people were just like losing their minds about it because I can't believe that you would do this with that brand. And people were just lambasting them and tagging them and just crap. And they come out with a thing and they were like, hey, what if we do this collaboration and then some people learn how to craft and then start going towards slow fashion? And I haven't heard anything since they put that out, but I was like, isn't that interesting?
And also, okay, so again, I obviously don't know a lot about the Zara brand, but you can, I mean, with the 20 collections a year, well, if you get your order in early enough, you can still put out 20 collections a year and have it made in a, you know, more time consuming or more quality way. Like it's not impossible. It's not just a,
right.
Yeah.
But according to Wikipedia, they are considered a fast fashion brand. So
Right.
it's not their, you know, it's not their thing. But so everybody was losing their minds about it. And then they were like, but hey, did you ever think about this? And then just crickets. Like it was all over my feed and then it just completely stopped and I didn't hear another thing about it. It was just very strange to me.
It's like, well, what if this brand wanted to do the work? What if they wanted to get better? Well, how are they supposed to do that if they get lambasted every time that they try to do something? Like, you know?
But, you know, they were out there apologizing just like always, but at least this time it seemed like the apology was a little bit more well received. Like people were like, oh, okay, makes sense, you know?
Yeah. And also speaking of respect for slow fashion and do the work, that Russian companies have now been banned off Etsy. There was a Slate article about it, kind of like, okay, so again, caveat, Russia invade Ukraine, it's bad, just like our vice president said. But
well, see, Ukraine is a small country and Russia is a large country, and Russia went into Ukraine.
That's right. We got that. Anyways.
Sorry, but I'm going to have to say that every time you say it now.
I know. It's like, okay, so caveat, by saying that Russians are really good crafters, that does not mean we in any way support Vladimir Putin, okay? Sorry that we have to say that. Let's put that out there, okay? Okay, me, you, got it. Good. All right.
Seriously, though, like a lot of times when I see a pattern or a project that I'm like, wow, that's amazing, I'll look it up and it's Russian. Like it often happens because crafting is a more desirable skill, I believe there. It's something that is passed down and people do, and it's
a valued skill. And also Russians, and not just Russians, but a lot of like Eastern Europeans, well, like for example, you'll see like a Finnish pattern or something. Like there is a lot of give a darn energy, okay? That, sorry, we don't necessarily have in America. Like I was looking through the Sundance catalog the other day, Robert Redford's hippie catalog. It's highly entertaining and very expensive, but it's like, yeah, I have a crocheted sweater. And I'm like, wow, that looks like crap. And look at the amount of money they're getting for this. And again, the whole thing's like, oh, well, this is cool because it looks like I made it myself. I'm like, you think that looks like I made it myself looks like garbage. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No,
this is
people that are true crafters, you
right.
can't tell. I mean, sometimes you can tell, but often
Sometimes you can
it's
tell, but it's like a
high
okay.
quality.
Look, I don't want to also other people have different styles for me. There's no accounting for taste. Okay. So maybe you see that and you love it. Okay, good for you. And I don't like it. That's okay too. But also it's like a look, there's also different skill levels. And it's like, okay, if this is like your first sweater, I'm like, that's good. But it's like when you see the people who are like doing real intricate stuff, like real levels of, very high quality, very fine, very small craftsmanship, who have paid attention to the details and have put it out there and have become like proper masters of it, you do see it a lot. And again, in Eastern European countries, Japan also, Japanese knitters are really good. But yeah, there's a lot of patterns coming out of Russia. And it was kind of mentioned in the article that it's like, oh, well, that it was specifically cross stitch and very intricate cross stitch patterns. And they were saying it's like, oh, well, basically because Russia doesn't care about copyright, like they're stealing other people's patterns and selling them. And I'm like, you can find that all over Etsy. You don't need to look at Russia. And yes, there is copyright issues because I think we said last week that you'll find it's like, well, they photocopied the book, but then it's pretty obvious when they photocopied the book and versus when it's, their own thing. But yeah, like you'll find, I mean, I think with banning Russia, you have a large segment of the crafting community of Etsy that your quality just went down by a lot. Because I mean, you'll see jewelry, you'll see I saw one person, it was a Russian shop that I really liked, and they had it was like a little dollhouse nightlight, and it was the coolest thing. But that here's the little house and kitchen, and there's a light on the inside and you can see the whole thing as it turns, and again, just really cool, really beautiful work.
Neat.
Yeah, and you'll see woodworking and metalworking and definitely in knitting and embroidery and all those sorts of things that they still make a lot of that by hand and they value it. So again, I mean, war is war, and I get that, but it's like these are the people who have really been supporting your industry and you just banned them even on a digital pattern level.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, like you said, it's war, it's different things, but it's just too bad because those people aren't necessarily out there funding the Kremlin either. They're just people like you and I who are like, hey, I'm good at cross stitch, so I'm gonna make some patterns, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, and Etsy is swinging the ban hammer as wide as they can because as it's mentioned in the article that you've had a couple people who are like, hey, I used to live in Russia. When I first registered the account, it was in Russia, but I live in France now and you still banned me.
Yeah, well, they're pretty liberal.
Yeah.
They're pretty liberal with, knocking people off and not wanting to hear about it.
We're the happy, warm, fuzzy, handmade community, unless you step a toe out of line.
But, they're pushing the Ukrainian makers insanely. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a very odd, I don't know, it's odd that it's happening on a digital handcrafted marketplace. I don't know.
Which is also weird. Yeah, because I saw one and it was a glassware company out of Kiev. And again, most beautiful, hand painted. It's like a teapot and it's see-through glass and it's painted with flowers and it's lovely. And I'm like, well, how are you supposed to ship glassware out of a war zone?
Well, it doesn't matter. But it's funny that you mentioned how these Eastern European countries and things were, they just have some beautiful workmanship. And I've been looking, my stepbrother and his wife, they got married back in October. They're having a baby girl. They found out like right after the wedding. So congratulations to them. But they live in Miami currently. And so I've been looking online for like a little baby romper onesie, ruffled girly, and a lot of the patterns that I came across were European, because we don't make things like that for our babies. We just don't. And that's one thing I've always noticed. And I'm guilty of it. When my kids were small, I didn't make them crap. I didn't have time for that. I was too busy and too tired. But in other countries, it's like something that is very common, that they make like these beautiful layette sets with the bonnets and the sweaters and the booties and yeah, I had a really hard time finding a pattern. I finally found one, and it's crocheted. I really wanted a knitted one with like ruffles on it, but I just could not find what I was looking for. So I bought the crocheted pattern. And I forgot to show you guys. I've been plugging away at it, but it's this much of a crochet circle currently, so you can imagine it in your head. I'll show it to you next week. Hopefully it'll be longer.
Right.
But yeah, we just don't put the same quality. Not quality, but we just don't have the same standard. I don't know. What's the best way to, you understand?
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it is that, I don't want to say that American knitting is more fast fashion, but a little bit American knitting is more fast fashion, that you have these very elegant and very wearable patterns coming out of Europe. And this is a very classic pattern, and the entire thing may be stockinette, but also it's something you're going to wear every day. And it's more of a product knitting, and American, it's more of, well, this is fun to make. It's like, but is it wearable? And
Right.
even with my own sweater. Okay, so I'm matching my background today. I'm wearing my undesirable #1 sweater today. So it's actually really nice and fluffy. But like, of the sweaters I've made, mostly I wear the one wolf sweater that I have. And I will sometimes wear this one, not very much, but that one, the one sweater that I showed off, that I spun the yarn and I invented the cables and I did the rest of it. And it's yellow and blue and it's kind of loud and I never wear it. Well, whose fault was that? My own fault. My own fault the whole time. But it's like, well, it was fun to make, so I made it. It's like, well, and now it lives in the closet. Like, was that really a wise decision? And maybe later I'll pull it out and be like, what was I thinking? This is amazing. Why aren't I wearing this all the time? But for now, it's like, well, did I really think this through? It's a total different mentality thing.
Yeah. And I mean, even looking at their baby clothes, a lot of things that we have for our babies, when my babies were small, it was very bright and patterned. And a lot of the stuff when I'm looking to make baby patterns is like gray and tan and blush and very light blue and very, very classic. Like, my kid could wear this all winter long and it would be fine. And there is a difference, but hey, But speaking of babies, did you hear that the Moderna vaccine is now trying to be pushed through for kids 6 months to 5 years?
I have not heard that, but it does not surprise me.
Yeah. Okay. So we're through this, right? I mean, I know that they're going to try to make this a thing again, but we're through this pandemic now. People are, okay, parents, what is making people think that they need to get their kids the shot? They just changed the numbers for children deaths by 25% because of a coding error.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it went down like 400 cases or something. So 25% was 400 cases, which means like 1,000 kids. And I'm sad that any kid died from it. Please do not take it the wrong way. But it went from 1,600 to 1,200 kids that died from it.
Yeah, as
2 years,
as the population in 2 years, as far as the population at large goes, as far as how many kids got the virus, which is a lot of them, it's not.
It's a very small number, and I'm not saying that I'm not sorry for those families, and I'm not, but this jab, which we know causes issues. It has been documented and has a pretty high rate of issues. Is it worth giving to your kids that are that small? Is it worth it when their mortality rate is like 0.00005%?
Yep.
And your thing of getting an issue from the shots is like more than that. It doesn't matter how much more. It could be 1%. It's still a ton more than 0.0005.
Right. That's, it's amazing. Everybody's saying how it doesn't, again, the CDC numbers before was that it doesn't affect kids much. And now they're smaller. And we've talked about this before. And not only that, it's like, oh, well, vaccine harms. We're now talking about that publicly. And it's the sort of dissonance between like, still everybody get your shot so fast. And
everybody get your shot. Yeah.
Even Ben Shapiro the other day was like, well, cases are going up and the Biden administration isn't giving you saying that you should get a vaccine again. I'm like, what else did they do? Really, what else did they do with their time? And it's like, well, you should definitely get your booster. And I'm like, Ben, what's your deal?
Yeah, no, okay? Dude, we're in this situation now where kids are needing to get heart exams before they can play sports because of the vaccine.
Yeah.
So you prefer that over just letting our kid get this cold?
Yeah, yeah.
Once again, I know that it's not just a cold for some people.
Mm-hmm.
For the majority of people who get it, though, it is.
But
so
young men are falling over on sports fields, and it's like, oh well, this is normal. There was a cricketer. I'm sorry that I forgot his name, but he was out of Australia, and he had a heart attack on the field too. And they were trying to say that it was due to increased anxiety because of, it's like, hang on, this guy has been a professional sportsman at the highest level for years. And you're saying that now that anxiety is an issue? That's not impossible, but it's like, it just wasn't seen in his life.
Yeah, no.
And they're saying like, oh, increase the heart attacks is due to the Ukraine crisis. It's like, oh.
Not to be callous once again, because the Ukraine crisis is not a great thing, but unfortunately, people in yours and mine generation have lived through several different wars now. So saying that is kind of crap. I mean, not to be a jerk, but yeah, and I just don't get this
one may say.
Yeah, no, I don't get this whole thing of like, oh yeah, I would rather give my kid that than let them face their chances of 0.0005%.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and maybe there are kids that need it, like immunocompromised, whatever. But we've seen that it doesn't work. And Hillary Clinton this week tweeted out, well, I've got COVID, but I've got my vaccine and my booster, so I am gonna get right through. I had COVID. I have a vaccine or a booster, and
you got right through it.
I also don't have any weird heart defects, so aren't I lucky?
Yeah,
freaking nonsense, dude.
It is truly insane.
So, also about babies, want to hear another thing that I forgot to bring up last week?
Oh yes.
There's a bill in Maryland, and now there's one in Colorado. Have you heard of it? It's horrifying. Mm-hmm. So they are trying to pass these bills in states saying that you can abort your kids whenever up to birth, and that if an abortion fails, a doctor and the parent can choose not to give them any life-saving measures and just allow them to die once they've been born alive. And the best part about it is that they can choose to kill their child up to 28 days after birth. So how does that work exactly? Because if we're allowed to kill babies, like my first kid was colicky. By the time 28 days had passed, maybe I would have been crazy enough to be like, get rid of this kid because I haven't slept in 28 days. Like,
but also decides? Even so, it puts something in your mind to be like, oh, wow, this is my child. I'm so happy. But, better shape up, kiddo. Better not show any sudden health problems. What?
Yeah, I don't get it. And okay, so if me as a parent, I'm like, 28 days, I don't really like you, meh. Well, what if somebody else comes in and kills my kid that's under 28 days? Is that murder? Or does it not matter? Because, but I wanted it. So like, how does that work?
I know. Well, and sorry, Rush was right. Rush Limbaugh used to joke about this, and it's like, well, what if your teenage son really ticks you off? It's like, well, this is the 100th and whatever trimester, buddy. Let's go.
But for real, like everybody who has kids has days where you're like, I don't particularly care for you today.
Mhm.
My kids started off the day like that, and I called my mom and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna bring them over a little early today. And but the difference is sometimes we all just need a change of scenery.
Right.
So
Sometimes we all just have a day. Sometimes
exactly.
not even us are likable.
But
Probably more often than we'd like to admit.
I certainly have days where I'm not likable. Trust me, I understand that. I can admit it.
Hashtag me too.
I don't think that that's what they meant with that hand. But no, this scares me because, well, obviously it scares me because sanctity of life. We don't cherish life anymore. But what's going to happen? What's going to happen to people that have diseases that eat away at them?
Yeah.
What about people who can't make decisions on their own, like Alzheimer's patients, or people who have had an accident where their brain function is less, or it opens the door to like super terrifying things.
Right.
Like not even about babies, just in general, it opens the door to this mindset that life doesn't matter.
Well, also, I mean, it already has this issue, but also the value of your life is contingent upon how much I don't know, how much annoyance you give to me, how much, if you are really reliable on me and I don't want that, well, then that means your life is not important, which is, I don't know, it's a very selfish attitude.
Right. And it turns into this thing of, if you are not a great contributor to society, if you don't have worth for the greater good, then they can make an argument about why you shouldn't be there anymore. And that's like horrifying, because who makes that decision?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they start off with the parent making the decision, but okay, so I've got stage 4 cancer and they say I have 3 months left to live. Instead of giving me, palliative care and some treatments to prolong my life, they can just be like, peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like who decides?
It's like, I'm sorry, you are really inconvenient for me. And you throw around, people throw around words like, ableist or capitalist hellscape and all of this stuff, and be like, what is this promoting?
Right. But I got news for all the people who throw around ableist. If we get to a communist regime here, mm-hmm. and you can't contribute and you aren't useful, they might not care for you either.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it works.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole, capitalism is a wonderful thing. Even the joke about capitalist hellscape, because that's how a lot of people will frame it. And again, monopolies and being hand in hand with the government, that really screws up a free market. But also capitalism, the ability for exchange of goods for money to promote, your own financial well-being, that is how you get out of things. And another wonderful part about the free market is that there's many ways to do productive work. And even if not, somebody else can do the productive work to help someone who isn't. If you have your own money to do your own with, you can help people. Okay. It's a big happy family. And that you're only, but having and this sort of runs into some feminist issues too, but the idea that your only value is how much money you bring in. Like, yeah, that's an issue. That it's like, again, exchange of money for goods, awesome for it. If your entire life is filtered by that, if that is your only value for a human being, you have some real problems.
Right. Right. And I don't know, but I can't imagine what mindset a woman would have to be in to be pregnant with their baby, feel it kick, feel it move, know it, just be like, yeah, I don't think I want to be a mom now. Like, I don't understand what this is. I know they're scared of Roe versus Wade being overturned, but does it have to be so extreme? They're scared of the Texas law about, is it Texas that was saying you can't abort after 6 weeks or whatever? Like, I get it. I get what they're trying to do, but this is bad. Like,
yeah, and also the total lack of, it's like, okay, so you're like, you have these vulnerable people, and it's like, okay, you're saying that, well, they're going through this situation, they shouldn't, we shouldn't have to make them keep their kids. It's like, well, are you making adoption easier? That would be an excellent option. That it is extremely difficult to adopt kids. So why not make it easier?
and it's extremely expensive.
It's extremely expensive. And also, it's like, have we taken a hard look at the foster care system lately? Have we? Because you don't want kids in that. It sucks. Have we looked at that? Have we made that easier? Are we making sure that we're not perpetuating problems in that? But even so, even saying the foster care system sucks, okay, I want kids to have the best chance they have, even if their life totally sucks. Like, still better to be alive than dead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I've known people who've gone through horrible situations and be like, well, do you say that they don't deserve to live because of that? It's like, no, but we want to promote the best that we can for people. But you also just can't, if the value of your life is like, well, your life is miserable, so it's not worth it. Like, who are you to choose? That's awful.
That's the thing. They're playing God, but once you open the door to like, oh, we can kill babies up to 40 weeks, we can kill them up to a month after they've been born. Well, then what happens? I have an 8 and a 6-year-old. Like, are we going to get to the point where like, well, they won't clean their room and they haven't done it for years, so I'm gonna, no, that's insane. But it opens the door to that insanity, and it's not going to be 6 or 8-year-olds. It's going to be the vulnerable elderly in our population. So that feels terrifying. That's what I think about all of it. What do you have on your agenda for today?
Just to touch on a couple subjects that we talked about, that there was a minister of European Parliament from Croatia who says that Canada has become a symbol for civil rights abuse.
No. Oh, abuse. Oh, I thought you were gonna say that that's how we should treat people, and I was about to.
No, the opposite of that.
Camera.
Sorry. Last word changes the whole sentence, that Canada has become a symbol for civil rights abuses. All right. Okay. And Benjamin Dichter, who is one of the Freedom Convoy people, he has a Substack now, and he's been putting out things that he's kind of telling his story about kind of his last day with the convoy, where people basically came to him and like, look, they arrested Tamara. You need to get out of town, basically. That they're like, you gotta go, because otherwise all of the leaders of the convoy, if they're all arrested and all of them has to do some sort of non-disclosure, whatever, on their deal, then no one can talk about what's happening. You get out.
Right.
So yeah, so that is, freaky. But yeah, go ahead. I think it's called like Honking for Freedom or something, but yeah, Benjamin Dichter. Ukraine. Ukrainians have been doing pretty well, it looks like. So well that it still cracks me up. that President Macron of France is now copying Zelensky's look, which is the funniest thing. I love it. You know, the tight blue jeans and like, oh yeah, I totally wear a hoodie. He got rid of wooden tables because, you know, wooden tables are basically Putin. So it's like he's set up.
They're basically Putin.
Basically Putin. He set up folding tables and like scattered papers on it, like his secretary is wearing jeans too. And his hair, you know, it's like the greasy and yet tousled look, but like, yeah, my stylist says Robert Pattinson is back in, so I'm gonna do the whole.
Dude, Robert Pattinson is back in, just FYI.
The fashion again. It's like you don't have to use that much product. But yeah, and then look, he's not a young guy. And there's one picture, and it's like you can always tell by the hands. It's like, yeah, I'm young and cool, and I'm in my hoodie. And then he leans his hands forward and like, you're not young and cool. You can tell it's kind of gnarled. It's like, look, it will happen to all of us, but you just can't pretend to be a young man with older guy hands. You can't.
You're too funny.
Yeah, it looks like he's occupying his own capital. Like, wow,
it does.
Shaking in his boots.
It's kind of sad how hard he's trying to look like Zelensky. And what war room? Why does he need to have these photos out there? Is there something going on in France we don't know about?
Well,
are they having? Is it war there too, or is it that they have war room meetings because of what's going on? Or
well, Macron, he has he's one of the few people that Putin is still talking to. So he's trying to do the whole peace deal thing because he met at several of those long tables with Putin. So he's had firsthand experience in the oppression that they caused. That he was still trying to talk to Putin, try to diffuse the situation. It didn't work, but you know, good effort. So yeah, he has that going on, but he's also up for re-election soon. And a couple of the more right-wing candidates who looked like they were going to take him down over the lockdowns and other issues. So it's Marine Le Pen and Eric Zemmour. And Eric Zemmour got in trouble this past because with the Ukrainian thing, because he had a previous statement saying that, you know, Putin is a nationalist and he's looking out for national interests. And this was before the war. So he was like, no, he's nationalist. He's looking out for national interests, you know, go Putin. So that came back to bite him in the butt, and he was not able to kind of get ahead of that and be like, hey, well, Ukraine's looking out for national interests too. It might have been as easy as that. He didn't do it. He's more of a kind of he's famous for the books that he's put out. So he's more of a philosophical candidate. So he's not very fast moving and on the pulse of the people. And Marine Le Pen, she's not super weak sauce, but a little bit weak sauce. So she's coming out a little better in all of this. But still, Macron is being the big tough guy. So he's actually doing pretty well out of posturing in his tight jeans.
It kills me. All of these people who they've got some, you know, re-election coming up, or like all of a sudden all the COVID things changed in the US because it wasn't looking good for the midterms. And
yeah, Gretchen Whitmer suddenly got real quiet.
A lot of them have. Even Hochul, who can't stop talking, has stopped talking for a minute. Mm-hmm. Probably because she knows we all hate her and she will actually have to get elected this time. But hey, whatever.
And so then it'll be new shiny thing and you'll forget what they did.
Yeah, well, they gave us our freedoms back.
Yeah.
They gave them back to us because there's something that we don't just get to have, that we have to wait for the government to tell us when we can have them.
They graciously gave us back our freedom so we can forget about the dead grandmas.
You kill me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Macron is trying to be cool.
Right.
He's
News
not.
Also, the kind of big thing with our hopefully never, but possibly yes, Supreme Court Justice, the Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson.
And I saw Cory Booker crying about how hard it is to be a Black woman and how proud he was of her. And I'll never be able to take her joy away. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
No, that was weird. A very bizarre and very dramatic performance. But she's I think she went through Kamala Harris's social skills coach because, okay, so I was, I mean, there's the biggest news about this, which is big news. Like she has a record of lenient sentencing for child porn possession.
Oh, good, good. That's the kind of
Yeah.
person we want in charge.
Yeah, you have what the book says, and then you have what the prosecutor recommends, and then you have what she says. Wow, that's a problem.
Right.
Yeah. So there's nothing like that. You have the thing where she refused to say what a woman is, and which has been going around because, Biden's like, it's going to be the black woman. And she's like, what's a woman? I won't say it.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm not.
But you know what a woman is.
Like,
you know what one is. You are one.
Right.
But heaven forbid she says it wrong.
Yeah. And also talk about the calculated moves of, it is better for your public image to look like an idiot who cannot even say adult human female, or, just the most basic. That would have worked. That's a workable.
I think right now that they've made a female into bleeders and non-bleeders, haven't they?
Yeah.
Didn't you hear that one?
Yeah. Like, let's talk about denigrating those women, guys.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so she has that going on, but I was watching a clip and it was Senator Hirono who was talking to her. And I'm like, wow, this woman has no social skills, because like Hirono had these puff piece questions, okay? And she was sitting there and she says, aloha, and oh, isn't that nice? And they're basically wearing the same jacket. Isn't that cute? And they're talking. And so she did this whole spiel on how she's asked every single Supreme Court justice if they've ever sexually abused somebody, and how it's important for her that she always asks this question. And also, isn't this, and she wants to put in legislation saying that, specifically about judges and sexual abuse. And she's going on by, no, you can't talk about legislation. So what do you do to make your offices, safe working environment? And she basically is like, oh, well, I vet people and make sure they're a good fit. Okay, next puff answer. And it was and it was like after Judge Jackson replied, Hirono would have to reiterate her answer as if to make it more coherent. And I'm like, talk about coach. You're a judge. You're a grown woman. You've been a judge for 10 years. You're 51 years old. You don't need Senator Hirono's help. And just the kind of like look on her face the whole time. But it's the Kamala Harris up and down voice, and like, it's like, again, who thinks that makes them look better as a judge, to have this sort of watery, wishy-washy attitude instead of just like, well, these are my answers and thank you. And then it's like, oh, and well, the one that I, sat for was because it was a mention about knitting. It's like, oh, well, and I just wanted to ask you, because lawyers, everyone says, are very, right-brained. I want to talk about your left brain, about creativity. And, it's like, oh, well, I was, with the stress of hearings that I wanted to learn to crochet because I got into the fiber arts, and my mom's a master, crochet artist, and she makes so many things. And oh, well, I did this and that, and I have a basement full of yarn. And then I started knitting, and it's just like, wow, is this?
Yeah. And every liberal knitter is just wetting themselves now that she said this. It's like when Kamala went to the yarn store, like, oh my God, it's just like us.
No, does this focus group well? Because it seems very pandering.
Whatever, she might be a knitter and a crocheter. That's cool, but
she might be. I
don't know. And everybody is like, oh, she's such a great candidate and blah blah, but she has some, and it has nothing to do with race, believe it or not. And I'm seeing on a lot of liberal accounts where they're like, oh, She is more qualified than any other justice on the bench at this time. And
Only been a judge for 10 years.
She is just the best judge. And why haven't we had more Black people and blah, blah, blah. And before we started, I was actually looking up. So 12.2% of the United States population is Black. 18% is some form of Hispanic. And I don't know, 58% is white. So if you take that into consideration, it makes sense that there haven't been a ton of Black justices on the bench based on numbers. It's very similar to what Kali was saying when she was on with us about, like, you know, they're trying to make Black people all, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have Black people in the spotlight and in big positions and whatever, but to look at something with 12% of the population and something with 60% of the population, it's going to make sense that more are the one than the other. It's just basic math, but because we don't have any guidelines or expectations for people to understand math and whatever, they don't get it. And
Right.
It's nothing to do with a person's race.
No,
it's
but
just numbers. There should be more Hispanic people on the Supreme Court with that thinking than there should be Black.
And I think the Hispanic members of our population should be better represented than Sotomayor, who is a moron. My goodness, she says some dumb stuff. Sorry, that was an Obama appointee. I'm like, she's dreadful. Surely we can do better. Just as a nation generally, but also as a specific member of the I hate these groups. Not that I hate these groups because they're this group or that group or whatever, but it's like
that you hate that everybody's being broken up into groups.
I hate that people are being broken up into groups.
Yeah.
And not that these groups don't exist and that's not a thing. Okay, it's not as if it's not a thing. It's not as if these groups of the population, like, they don't exist or that there isn't differences in groups of population. I'm saying is like, oh, well, we have to have somebody from this group because that's, you know, it's tokenism. It's the whole tokenism.
It is tokenism.
Like, can't we have the best? And the best comes from everywhere.
You're right. But it's also, if you don't fit their, what they expect of your group, they are going to do whatever they can to get rid of you or to fame you. Or so Justice Thomas was in the hospital, and I saw somebody had tweeted saying, okay, nobody else is going to say this, but I hope he dies. Well, he's a Black member of the Supreme Court. So if you're worried about representation, shouldn't you want him on there?
Yeah, nobody's doing flower crown t-shirts of him, and I think he's awesome. Like, what a great judge.
But because he has the incorrect political affiliation, he doesn't count. And that's the part that makes it so frustrating. Because it really only matters if you check their boxes and you agree with them. If you check their boxes, but you happen to think for yourself, then heaven forbid that you get that position in the first place.
Right.
It's not about representation. It's about being lockstep with them. Right.
And okay, so today I was looking for Judge Jackson, and I had typed in crochet. So I was seeing if there was any previous mentions of this or, you know, any photos or anything. So I'm looking, and a lot of what comes up is Etsy, and people already have the t-shirts out. She's not even nominated yet, but it's like, you know, they're go with the merch. Like, what is this?
Because she checks the boxes and she's politically liberal. That's why. Right. So is there anything else that you had to do? Because you have to go to work.
I do. It's getting late for me. No. I have a couple of brief mentions for a couple of friends of ours I keep forgetting to bring up with other shows. But Tina from Awented Yarns and Fibers is back. She's not dying, but she did a video. And if you follow, she's one of our first guests. I love Tina. we're actually pretty booked for guests, but I'd love to have her on again. She's hilarious. But she's gone for a year. She had some health issues. She had an eye patch for a while, and that was kind of before she left, that she had some sort of a medical issue with her eye, but has sight of both eyes again. And she did a podcast, and it's awesome, and y'all should go see it. Also, Carrie Smith, formerly of Unsafe Space, she has her own channel, Deprogrammed with Carrie Smith, and it is so good. You should check it out. And she's interviewing Neil from Blocked magazine, and that's coming out today, so it will already be out by the time that this video comes out.
Yep.
And let's see, Sweet Mountain Crafts, Sweet Mountain Fiber. She has a Patreon page now that she's doing a yarn club sort of a thing. Our lovely sponsor, Lynn, as always, she has her banned books collection, and she's coming out with new stuff for the summer, so her newsletter. But yeah, we have a lot of people, a lot of friends doing a lot of things.
Yeah. And if you haven't checked out Lynn, make sure you go to chickenladyfiberarts.com and you use our code PIKGreen20 to get 20% off of your order, so that you can get fabulous yarns like her banned books or her new summer collections, which are happy and fruity and flirty and all of those fun summer things. And as Anne mentioned, we have a bunch of interviews coming up this next 6 weeks, I think. So we're gonna have Devery Metcalf and Cody Schlegel. They're both authors. Devery wrote a book about, it's a companion to a children's illustrated book, so that's exciting. It's gonna be fun. We have Birdie Rose coming on, who's an artist that has
famous artist Birdie Rose, as her moniker is. So
yes, and she has been the left doesn't like her. She's a British artist, and she speaks about like trans people and different things. So it's going to be interesting.
Female affirming art, as the kids say.
Yes, exactly. And then our last guest that we have scheduled so far is Catalyst Designs, which is a yarn dyer who is on the conservative side, and people didn't like them because they do famous women-based yarns such as First Ladies, but they didn't push a Michelle Obama color, and they were kicked off of a platform or got their money refunded. We're going to hear their story though, because they're not the correct kind of First Lady yarn dyers. So it's going to be some interesting people coming on in the next few weeks. So make sure you guys, stay tuned for those things. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, our main places, Facebook, all the other places, all the other sites. And we'll see you next week. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Use that yarn code for Chicken Lady. See you next week.
All right. See you guys.